Normal people that dated a celebrity. What was it like? A few years ago, I was getting on a flight back to San Diego after my cousin's wedding. I was very hungover and judging people as I walked to my gate. I see this long-haired man stride by me in a purple bun-down and think, who is this cupcake? Not a bad comment, just a shirt collar comment. As he walks by, I realize, holy heck, that's Fabio. A bit later, after getting a snack, my brazen and probably still intoxicated self saw him sitting at his gate and just sat down next to him. I look away, then right at him and say, "You're, Fabio." And he says so coolly, "Yes, I am." And he shakes my hand. We proceeded to talk for 30 minutes until he had to leave. He was so intelligent, discussed cancer therapies in depth, and I recall thinking, just nod and smile. Fabio is way smarter than you, just nod and smile. Before leaving, he asked for my number and texted me the next day for a date. Nothing ever came of it, but I still have his number on my phone. P.S. My dad followed up for weeks to make sure I wasn't dating the man on every romance novel cover. She should get that date for the sole purpose of telling her dad she's now dating the man on every romance novel cover. Story 2. Probably too late for this, but about 15 years ago, when the show The Simple Life with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie was popular, I made out with Paris Hilton at a nightclub in Baltimore. Essentially, they were filming them doing all sorts of random jobs around the country and staying with local families, all for the culture clash laughs. One of those families ended up being my friend and her family. Being a close friend and a well-known admirer of Paris at the time, I was invited over and got to hang out with her and Nicole Richie a good amount while they were in town. Both of them were super sweet and a lot smarter than they played for the camera. Paris was a great kisser, and the story is always a hit with my friends. A few months later, her phone was hacked and stuff was leaked. My number was in her phone book, and I got spammed with prank calls from 4chan or something. I imagine it was a lot worse for anyone who was actually famous. Anyhow, basically lost total contact after that, but still a fun story. Paris Hilton, great kisser? That's the kind of insider info that could get you a celebrity gossip column. Story 3. Not me, but my aunt dated Weird Al Yankovic when she was in her mid-20s. I wasn't alive back then, but my family tells me he was a genuinely funny person in a way you wouldn't very much expect. I can't personally give any examples, but my dad and aunt had plenty of stories. One of my much older cousins actually has a signed guitar that Al played with in the live show. My aunt and Al met from my dad being a radio DJ as a teenager, and he met a lot of celebrities through that. Mostly 90s and early 2000s pop and country stars, but anyways, the station my dad worked at threw Weird Al a birthday party. And my aunt just happened to be there, and they ended up together for a decent amount of time. Every once in a while, Al will come to town to say hi to her. Even though they aren't together, they're still friends. And no, Al isn't cheating on his wife with my aunt. My aunt is a strong married Christian, and I'm more than 100% sure she wouldn't do that. One of these days, I might end up meeting him, which I think would be pretty cool. It doesn't surprise me that Weird Al is a stand-up guy. He's always appeared to be very genuine and down to earth. Story 4. My college roommate and best friend became YouTube famous over the years. It has been really odd to watch it happen. I've been on trips with her, gone to conventions, seen fans cry over her, and cry over me, which is even odder. And it's a weird balance of totally normal and totally abnormal. When we go out to lunch, sometimes she'll get a fan or two that asks for a picture, and it has changed the way she views the world. Every time she leaves the house, it is stressful for her. She's always worried about how she's looking or acting. She's always been a sweet girl, so she really doesn't have much to worry about. But she stresses so much about being her best self to everyone she meets because you never know who knows her and who doesn't. She's terrified of anyone having anything but a 100% positive experience with her. It can really wear on a person to not be able to let that go. And yes, YouTube famous may not be what Opie had in mind, but I'm sure this applies everywhere. The loss of anonymity is brought up often in celebrities, but I don't really understand it till I saw her go through it myself. Story 5. Not me, but I have an obnoxiously attractive female coworker who is sort of obsessed with gaining an online following. Does the whole Insta thing and has 100,000 followers. You know the deal. A few years back, she told us that she's dating a guy who plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Says that she slept with him the first date and is trying to lock him down. He's so rich. All the sketchy stuff that you would hear from someone that obsessive. My buddies and I are obsessed Leafs fans, so we're trying to get the name out of her. For those of you who don't know, the NHL has farm teams in the AHL, where there are guys on NHL deals who aren't good enough for the NHL play, so technically they have NHL contracts, but they're getting paid their AHL salaries. Turns out this girl was dating Garrett Sparks, who at the time was the AHL backup goalie. She was really having a difficult time understanding the technicalities of contracts or leagues until I pulled up his salary details and explained to her that this guy was making less money than I was. She ghosted him immediately. Fast forward a few years later, and Sparks has actually gone into the NHL. Barely. And now she goes on about how she used to date an NHL player. She doesn't say the name anymore, though. Story 6. Created a throwaway for privacy purposes and not getting sued for slander. Dated a decently well-known actress for about a year. There were definitely elements of it that were fun and elements that were not. She's noticeable, so when we went on dates, she either always wanted to go out when no one was around, late at night or early in the morning, or if we went when it was busy, she probably got pulled aside once or twice for a photo. Really wasn't the end of the world, but she always made sure it wasn't in the photos because she enjoyed having some level of privacy in her life, which I tried to respect. The primary issue was the whole drama she had to put on when she was dating me. When we started, she told me sleeping around was basically just part of the job. She wanders off with some guy and there's new articles, they're most likely true. So it was probably once every other month. She basically said I wouldn't hear from her for a couple of days, and then I saw some report that she's now sleeping with X person. I put up with it for a while because she was okay with me seeing other people in the meantime. I only did it once and I didn't enjoy it. And dating a celebrity has its bonuses. She paid for almost everything, went on some fun trips, etc. Wouldn't really recommend it to anyone out there though, for the long term. I'm in my mid-20s right now, and from what I saw, every celebrity in that age range is basically cheating 24/7. Story 7. I dated a celebrity who was a big deal in her genre, but nobody else has probably ever heard of her. It was really nice being moved to the front of the line and having great seats wherever we went. I honestly couldn't deal with the attention she got all the time. She had beautiful women throwing themselves at her, messing with her hair and clothes, touching her. I felt like I could never compete and she could sleep with any one of them whenever she felt like it. Plus, she had to be the center of attention. If she wasn't getting enough attention, she would create a scene. I also eventually noticed that she wouldn't let on that we were dating. She always said she was single, so that was why she had all these women coming on to her everywhere we went. It felt like a game and I didn't want to play. After we broke up, she started dating a jazz musician who thought she was more popular than she actually was. It was very comical seeing them out in public together, trying to see who could get the most attention. I was amazed that they could both fit their big fat heads in the same car. Story 8. So I've got 3 stories. The first story is mine, and it's not really that dramatic. A couple of years ago, I met a guy who was the lead singer of a band at a local show. The venue was kind of bad. It was at a big storage unit that had been converted, and the other bands weren't too great, but his band was headlining the show. They played their set and then were standing around drinking with everyone who'd come, probably like 30 people. I walked up to him and told him I'd really enjoyed their set, and we ended up talking for about an hour. We continued texting for about 4 or 5 months. Never really dated, but we enjoyed each other. His band just got signed and released their first album, and he's dating a girl who seems to be really sweet. Plus, I'm still friends with him on Facebook, and he recently changed his name and privacy settings, so I feel a little cool about him keeping me on his friend list. The second story is pretty much the same, but is about my little sister. She moved up to Nashville a couple of years ago for school and met an up-and-coming musician. They met up a few times, but eventually called it quits because he's a couple of years older than her and wanted her to be able to enjoy college without getting wrapped up in him. Quality guy, and his albums are pretty good. The third story is about my mom, who went to an all-man brothers show in like 79 or 80, which would have made her 20 or 21 at the time. She told me that she didn't really know who they were, but her friend had asked her to go, so she went. So after the show, she's standing outside smoking, and this guy walks up behind her and taps her on the shoulder. She says that he said, "You're going to come home with me tonight," or something along those lines that's equal parts creepy and pompous. So mom goes, no, I'm not. Then turns back around to her friend, who's apparently awestruck and mom doesn't know why. So the guy steps around and is like, "Do you know who I am?" And mom goes, "No, and I really don't want to." Then she drops her cigarette and stamps it out and grabs her friend and goes to the bar. Anyway, apparently that was Greg Allman. She told me that story a few years ago and I lost my mind. At one point I even said, "Mom, I could have been his kid?" And she laughed and told me not to tell Dad. So those are things that kind of fit here, I think. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 9. I went on 2 dates with a Z-list celebrity from a reality show a few years ago. Think famous enough to where they have a bit of a social media following, non-famous enough to be recognized in public most of the time. First date was okay. We got coffee and dinner and chatted a bit. He texted me later asking if I want to hang out again sometime. I agreed, so we went out for dinner a second time. He got to the restaurant a few minutes, I think less than 15, before I did, and got kind of an attitude about making him wait for me. Other than that, that dinner was okay. He later texted me saying he'd like to go out again if I wanted to do anything other than get a free meal. I was kind of taken aback by that comment. We just kind of slowly faded as far as the texting went. I didn't really like his attitude. He was pompous and entitled. He seemed to think he was more famous than he actually was. He wasn't even really a main cast member on his show. He would randomly text me when he would be in this area for like a couple years after that, but I never really talked to him again. It's not really that interesting of a story. I'm not revealing who I was to protect my own anonymity. I've told a few people I know in real life about this, and I try not to post identifying stuff on Reddit. But most people wouldn't have even heard of him anyway. Story 10. I have two, crazily enough. Both forever ago. One, a musician, nearly married the guy. In private, he was super chill. Fun, loved doing things with me and my kid, kinda dorky and sweet. Average guy. When we were out, when someone came up to him, he acted so different, like he flipped a switch and was acting like the smooth, cool guy. Found out he was cheating. Told me it was just part of the job. He had a top song on the billboards when we broke up, and it was so popular it couldn't go anywhere without that song coming on. And instantly getting mad. We're friends now, and I keep in touch. Recently, I saw him when he was touring in my city and invited me and a friend to see them perform. The other guy was normal enough, down to earth, and very sweet. Only saw him for a bit before finding out he was part of a very high-profile case for a financial crime, and last time I saw him, he told me he was probably going to prison. 2 weeks later, he was on national news. Since then, I've seen a documentary involving it, and every once in a while, I'll see it mentioned on a crime show. Met the musician in a bar, met the second guy in online dating. Another guy, not sure he counts. I'm not into political news, but if someone is into that, they might know him. He's often one of those expert opinion guys they have on CNN. Didn't last long, only one date. He was sleazy and kept asking for suggestive pics. Met him while out for dinner with friends. He asked me for a number when I was on my way to the bathroom. Story 11. She may not be a celebrity to you, but she is to me. I dated a scientist at the forefront of HIV research. She once canceled a date with me because her team was invited to a Nobel laureates conference and had to leave for Germany the next morning. She knew it sounded ridiculous or even fake, but she assured me it was really happening. And sure enough, the website for the event was posting pictures of the various panels and galas, and there she was in the audience. Unfortunately, I couldn't handle the fact this person in front of me might be interested in me. I couldn't believe it, and it colored our future dates. The questions became less about her and her life and became all about her research and research techniques, as well as the amazingly talented people around her. She would eventually stop talking to me and move on. I really wish I could have at least pretended she was in my league and also better shown I was interested in her. And maybe tried harder to show how interested I am, that I have potential. Dr. Jones, if you're reading this, I would be very, very surprised if you're single. You're beautiful, talented, funny, and intimidatingly smart. Should you be available, though? Hit me up. Story 12. I dated a fairly famous director. I was working as a production assistant in one of his films, and he singled me out, walked up to me, and asked me out. The PA is literally the lowest person in the food chain in a movie production, so of course I was going to say yes to the director who asked me out. We ended up going out to dinner once, after which he left me a key to his hotel room, and well, whatever you imagined from there actually happened. It was near Thanksgiving, and he wasn't going home to LA over the short break, so he came and had dinner with my family for Thanksgiving. After the production ended and he left town, I emailed him a few times, but honestly, we had nothing in common. And he was ugly. A Woody Allen-looking dude. He's more famous now than he was then, though I wouldn't necessarily call him a celebrity because 99% of you wouldn't recognize him if you saw him. But you'd know his name. And it isn't hard to figure out from what I've said. Story 13. I can't tell people in real life because they will never believe me, and I guess you guys will probably call me a liar too, but whatever. I went on a date with Taylor Swift before she got super famous. It was right out of high school when she was making a name for herself, but now yet a gigantic deal. I knew her because we lived near each other. It was the craziest thing, really. I only asked her out on a dare because, even not famous, she was way out of my league. But it turns out she was really nice and enjoyed the opportunity to go hang out for a while. She always had a reputation as a girl who burns the candle at both ends, and she's always stressed, so I think she just wanted to relax. It was a pretty basic, just out of high school date. We went to see a movie, and I got to feel like stupid rolling up to her nice house in my POS Datsun Honeybee. Don't let her early work fool you. She's a rich kid. Anyway, on to the stuff you guys are actually wanting to hear about. So after the movie and some dinner, we went back to my place to listen to some music. After a while, she pretends to be interested in checking out the hiking trails behind my house. She said she really enjoys being out in the woods, but I figured she just wanted to be away from my parents. So we get out into the woods and very quietly get into some heavy making out. Clothes go everywhere, and that's when this story starts to take its turn. Gentlemen, I have some things to tell you about Taylor Swift. First thing, turns out she loves giving one. Pretty much the most enthusiastic one in my life happened on that trail. She couldn't get enough. However, she's terrible at it. She's got heart, but I hope for all future guys' sake that she took some lessons. After a while of that, we get down to the main event. Another thing you should know about her is that she's somewhat hairier than one might expect from a super hot rich girl. Never got to ask her what was up with that, actually. So anyway, she's just as crazy as she was before. Except this time she's straight up clawing my back. I'm not going to pretend I didn't make it where it needed to go, but god damn, I was expecting some kind of revelation from her. It was one of those things where it is so disappointing because you had expected so much from it. So after it was all said and done, we're putting our clothes back on when I noticed that I'm actually hurting from my back. I knew she had a heart in it, but I didn't expect for her to draw wounds. But then I noticed her nails were longer and sharper than I had noticed before. And that's when I started to put it all together. Guys, Taylor Swift is a bear. I must have shown on my face when I put it all together because she got a glint in her beady black eyes and roared. I didn't even bother putting my clothes back on. Just ran for dear life. Luckily, I knew the woods behind my house better than she did. Even more luckily, I was able to squeeze through some spots that her 100-pound frame just couldn't get. Winter was coming soon. I knew if she caught me, I'd be ended and stuffed into the cave she cleverly disguised as an expansive suburban home so that she could keep her energy up before hibernation began. I eventually wound up hiding in a stump by a stream until she gave up and left. It was the most frightened I've ever been in my life. Story 14. I'm going to make this as short as possible. I had matched up with this woman on some site. We talked for a while through text or whatever. Didn't put much weight in it. Talked for about 2 or 3 weeks. She invites me over to her house. Turns out it was a mansion. Said she will cook me dinner. Cool. She invites me in. Remember the huge house? It's completely empty except for a couch and desk with a computer in the living room. No photos, nothing on the wall. Completely empty except for those items. I wasn't even sure what she was cooking with because I could only assume there was also nothing in the kitchen too. She's in the kitchen. I ask her because it's awkward sitting in an empty room by yourself. Can I play some music? She says, sure, I've got some on my computer. I go into the music folder and there's all these files I have no idea what they are. I'm curious, so I double-clicked one. Unbeknownst to me, apparently she had really been rocking out previously that day because the speakers were already full blast. So I got the computer playing as loud as it could possibly go. The only problem was that what I had clicked on was not music at all. So since the speakers were up full blast, my date heard from the kitchen and came sprinting down the quarter-mile-long hallway. Felt slow-mo. Imagine it slow-mo. My eyes moved back to the screen as this very intense ritual is still in play. My date is running and yelling, no! The screen is moving up as the scene progresses. She says, no, stop. I'm like, yo, chill, I've seen stuff like this before. All good. She says, no, there's something I didn't tell you. As the camera had been panning up, I realized it was her. I looked at her and she said, I make movies. She cooked me fish, mashed potatoes, and asparagus. Meal was good. Had work in the morning. She said, if you stay, I'll make it worth your while. Slept well. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.